Notamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tito Jayodirya Nishtapreshu Bhadvesu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashuki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Nigama Kopaturugaritam Palam Shukamakaram Itadravi Samyutam Pibata Bhagatam Rasamalayam Mohora Hora Sika Bhugi Bhavakaham Krishna Swadam Bhagate Damagini Karona Sadri Samasa Karanako Duno Didaham Atmanamaste Munayana Granti Karvanti Adikimbate to Buddhagana Hari Anarta Vashamam Shakshad Bhakti Yogam Lokasajana Chakra Satpadesamitam Chakvasharanam Charanam Bhusham Hare Bhajana Bhakpato Yato Tata Vipita Kalvartiptam Bhajatam Shadharmataham Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jikatpate Gopisha Gopika Kantara Kantana Mostate Jayatam Shuruto Pangom Hama Mater Matergati Matsavasha Padam Bojo Radana Madana Mohano Sri Manrasa Rasaram Vivam Sipata Karsan Binoshan Ubago Gopanata Sri Siram Divyad Brindarani Kapadumata Sri Matat Nagarishima Sanishto Sri Sri Radhishila Govinda Prastadabi Seva Manushmanami Namo Brahmanyada Go Brahmanyataya Chajigaritaya Krishna Govindaya Namo Naman Mangalang Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Gudaya Mangalam Panidika Kro Mangarayatano Om Narayana Vidmehi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Pachodhyate Om Mahadevi Vidmehi Vishnu Padni Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Pachodhyate Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Namastubhyam Sarheswari Hari Priya Namastubhyam Namastubhyam Tere Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sunyavari Praskita De Satanine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Brett. Wisdom Wednesday today. Just to catch up, a reminder of what we talked about yesterday. We talked about how it was that Krishna is the ultimate mover. He's behind the soul, which is the reason that the body is animated. I have this shirt on, and if I do calisthenics and run and jump, the shirt appears to be alive. However, if I take the shirt off of my body and just drop it on the ground, it falls shapeless, inert. None of that movement, none of that previous animation. It will only appear to be alive because it was on my body. So similarly, we talk about living bodies. He or she is living. Actually, the body is dead. It's made of dead elements, earth, air, fire, water. The body is never alive. It only appears to be alive when it's inhabited by the soul. We gave the example yesterday of a glove. A glove may appear to have a life on it of its own, but if you extract the hand from the glove just lies shapeless, again, and inert on the ground. So it's the hand that causes shape and animation and movement. But if we step back one step, it's the soul within the body that causes the hand to be animated, which causes the glove to appear to be alive. But we can step back one more step and conclude that the Supreme Soul, Krishna, he is the source of every individual soul in the universe. He's also within the heart of every individual soul, is within the atom. So ultimately, the reason why this glove appears to be alive is because of Krishna. He enters into everything. Jagat idam tatam, jagat abhyakta mortinam, the Bhagavad Gita. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat abhyakta mortinam. Jagat means this universe, and abhyakta means unseen. Morta means form. Krishna is saying that although I am a unique individual person, I have my own abode in a spiritual environment far away from this material world. It's not that I just create everything and then leave it to its own devices, walk away from it. Sometimes we use the example that God's like a watchmaker. He makes the watch, he winds it up, and then he walks away, has nothing further to do with it. Well, Krishna makes the material world. He has his separate Leelas. He has his divine friends and associates. He has his own particular world, which is far superior to the material world. But that doesn't mean to say he abandons the material world. He enters into each and every aspect of the material world in his abhyakta mortina, his invisible, unseen form. If Krishna allows it, you can run and jump. You can be a professional athlete, hockey, ice skater, basketball. If Krishna doesn't allow it, you can't even tie your shoes. Everything comes back to Krishna. Krishna is the ultimate switch. It's up to Krishna how successful you are, how agile you are, how athletic you are, how dexterous you are. Krishna is the filter. So the best thing we can do in our lives is to try to, number one, please Krishna, and number two is try to work as an instrument for Krishna in the will, as his representative in the world. God is the loving Father of every living being. He wants the best for all of us. And those who are his devotees are by definition the well-wishers of all the inhabitants of this material as well as spiritual world. Vyaktam atmanam mamaram bhagavan atma bhagavanam anukulena anukulanam. What is it? Vyaktam atma bhavam bhavam bhagavan atma bhagavanam anugrahena modanam siddhim rupa charatiraham. Krishna says in the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that in order to make himself available to fallen living souls rotting in this material world of birth, death, disease, and old age, he walks back and forth through the earth. He traverses the surface of the earth. He crisscrosses the surface of the earth, making transcendental knowledge available to anybody who's interested in it, setting a standard of behavior which is without envy, which is completely peaceful and contented. He does all that in the person of his pure devotees. God is represented by his pure devotees who crisscross the earth. Sometimes they'll knock on a householder's door early in the morning and beg a glass of milk. The householder might think, oh, here he has given up everything for God, but he has to come to me for milk, so I'm greater than God. Well, the fact is he doesn't have to come to you for milk, and you're not greater than God. But he's coming to you as a pretext that in case you want to invite him in, ask him some questions, take the dust from his feet. Even a moment's association with a pure devotee can be totally life-changing for you, for your wife, and for your kids as well. So Krishna manifests himself, is represented by his devotees who canvass on his behalf throughout the world. And ultimately, it's up to Krishna whether and how much success we experience in life, whether it's material success, which is temporary, spiritual success, which is imperishable. And so there's really no other higher priority in life than to work for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Gajendra comes to this realization. It's clear to him now, as the crocodile's winning the battle, dragging him further and further into the water, and it looks like the course of events is such that Gajendra is not going to prevail here. In the natural, Gajendra is finished. He's done. It's just a matter of time. Now, crocodile's got the upper hand. The crocodile's got him in the water. The crocodile is getting stronger. Gajendra is getting weaker. Gajendra comes to the realization through the school of hard knocks, the university of life, the school of experience. Little by little by little by little by little. First of all, he's taken away from the land in which he was born. Materialists put a lot of stock in land. They think the land they're born is worshipable. And Gajendra took birth in the heavenly planets in the Trikuta mountain range. Very beautiful place. But the first thing is he's dragged away from the land, which he considers sacred because it's a place of his birth. He's pulled into the water. And as he's pulled into the water, he's separated from the other male elephants. They might have been able to help him on the land, but they don't want to venture into the water to help him because they think there might be other crocodiles. And if they try to put their safety on the line to help the king, Gajendra, maybe they'll share his same fate. And so they're at the edge of the water, expressing their support, cheering him, you might say, but at the same time, they're not gonna step into the water to save him. Similarly, his wives, his children, they have every reason to want Gajendra to live, to prevail. He is their protector. He is their Lord. He is their father. He is everything for them. And yet they're also not so foolhardy as to enter into the water. They all stand watching this spectacle play out on the edge of the water. Some of them get tired after all. It's 1,000 years. And you have hunger, you have thirst. The mothers have to feed their babies. The other elephants have to go about their business. And so we can imagine there is probably not a peanut gallery now. At the time this incident is described by Sutta Goswami, Gajendra is probably, for all practical purposes, there by himself with the crocodile in the water. There may be other crocodiles, but there may very well be no more elephants. So everything has been taken away. His birthplace, his children, his wives, his fellow elephants, his own body, the strength, the virility of his own body, the confidence that he had in his own body to deal with any challenges and overcome any adversity. He's got nothing left, really, except having lost everything else, he's now come down to the basics, which is that the only life source, the only entity that had sustained me in all of this was not my wives, not my children, not the other elephants, not the land of my birth. It wasn't even my own soul, but it was the Supreme Soul. It was Krishna. Just like fingers within a glove are ultimately manipulated by the soul, which is ultimately manipulated by the Supreme Soul. Gajendra realizes that, who am I? I am not the king of the elephants. I'm not Gajendra the elephant. I am part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If he removes, if he causes the fingers to exit from the glove falls down. It has no more value. So it's up to Krishna whether my soul remains in the body and some or other I get rescued from this very dangerous situation, or if Krishna decides I will succumb to the attacks of the crocodile. Whatever he wants, it's up to him. He has breathed life into me in the first place. He's given it to me. He sustained it. It was just an illusion that I was taking care of myself by my own strength. The strength I have comes from Krishna. The food I have comes from Krishna. The ground I walk on comes from Krishna. The body I have comes from Krishna. It was an illusion in the first place to think that anything depended upon me. Now I'm back to basics. I'm back to basics. Krishna is the be all, the end all. Bahuni me vyati tani janmani shani tani hambeta natam beta pratantapa. After many births and deaths, he was actually in wisdom, surrenders to Krishna, knowing him to be all in all. In a previous life as Indradumna, he had done most of the work of surrender, but was incomplete. He wasn't quite there. He was most of the way there. Now, in the form of an elephant, at the last stage, he gets the opportunity to finish that, which was started in his past life. It's interesting because he forgot the fact that he was almost a pure devotee in his last life. He was that close. And yet he was shrouded in forgetfulness because of the change of the body, and particularly because of taking a body, which is considered to be in the mode of ignorance for the most part. He forgot that he was 99.9% a pure devotee of the Lord. But the good news is that Krishna didn't forget. The individual soul, which inhabited the body of Gajendra, forgot, but Krishna did not forget the devotional service of his previous life. In the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, Bahuni me bhyati tani janmani tani havan nutam beda parandava. Krishna says to his friend, Arjuna, both you and I have taken many births. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. O subduer of the enemy. O subduer of the enemy. Arjuna is an extraordinary. He's not an ordinary living being. He is known. When people address Arjuna, they address him as subduer of the enemy. He's a champion. And yet, as exalted as he is amongst the human society, he still is veiled in forgetfulness from birth to birth because of the change of body. Similarly, Gajendra has forgotten the fact that he was virtually a pure devotee in his past life. And he didn't just forget it for a moment. It wasn't like a temporary lapse. It's been 1,000 years or more that he's been totally oblivious of the details of his previous life and of the fact that he was so advanced in devotional service. So the fact that he remembers now is not of his own doing. On his own, as soon as he exited, by virtue of the change of body from his previous life as Indradumna, the 99% pure devotee, into the current life as an animal, he forgot everything. So the forgetfulness is the nature of the soul. Forgetfulness is a problem with the individual limited soul, limited in time and space. And he goes on to live most of his life on the heavenly planets, where their one day is our 6 months. He fights with the crocodile for 1,000 such years. No, I can't even imagine how many years that is by our calculation. But he's already reached maturity. He's already got a family. He's already got children. He's already got sovereignty among the elements. So he could very well have been 10,000 years by the calculation of the demigods old already before the fight. And during all of that, on his own, being enamored with his own power, his own influence, not once did he remember Krishna. Amazing. It's amazing the ability of the soul to slip. Prabhupada said there are spaces between your beads. He says during the space between your bead, you can forget Krishna. When we chant in the morning, we chant rounds. One round is 108 beads, and each bead has a little knot. You'll notice between the little wooden beads, there's the string or twine is knotted. So you go from one bead to another. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then between that bead and the time you go to the next bead, Prabhupada says Maya can come in. Between the nanosecond between chanting one mantra and another mantra can bring forgetfulness. Maya can achieve dominance during that moment. Even while we're chanting, we can be thinking of something else. We can be elsewhere. Another example given in this connection is that the sun's rays don't exist in a vacuum. They don't create themselves. The sun's rays come from and they depend on the sun. But the sun globe does not depend on the sun rays. Similarly, Gajendra's soul depends for remembrance, for knowledge, for getting rescued from a situation in which he's literally and figuratively in over his head. His soul has got to learn to depend on the Paramatma, who is the super soul. But that doesn't mean that the Paramatma depends on the individual living. Krishna is always above the vicissitudes of material nature, always in an enviably transcendental position. So Gajendra said, he's calculating this way. Okay, my body, my leg is being chewed by the crocodile, mutilated, bloody. My leg is part of my body. So my body is being chewed by the crocodile by extension. Now this body is alive because of the presence of the Atma. Even the big elephant's body, like a mountain in and of itself, is animated because of the tiny soul, Keshaga Satigabhaga, which is 1/10,000 the size of his tip of his soul, of a hair, 1/10,000 size of tip of a hair. It's the length and breadth of the soul. And that soul animates this huge body of an elephant. However, but where does that tiny soul get its power? It's not natural. We don't find in the natural world any microchip or any little engine, however miniaturized it might be, can power an elephant's body for thousands and thousands of years. Just imagine one elephant fighting another elephant. What a spectacle that is. What an expenditure of energy. And yet really driving both of those huge machines, which might weigh 5,000 pounds each, are two little tiny souls, 1/10,000 the size of a tip of a hair, working the controls from within somewhere. But so how does that happen? Just imagine the power that 1/10,000 the size of a tip of a hair, part and parcel of God, can power. And where does they get their power from? We don't find in material nature any miniaturized motor with that level of power. They get their power from the Paramatma, the Supreme Soul, the expansion God who is seated within the heart of all living beings. This is Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. Achinta Beda Abeda Tattva. The nature of God, some people stress that God separate from this world has nothing to do with it. Other people stress that God is inseparable from this world, but has no separate individual existence. They'll say God is the universe or God is love. Lord Chaitanya reconciled the two polarized points of view by saying Achinta Beda Abeda Tattva. It's inconceivable because we can't imagine someone being apart and at the same time close. In our world, in our reality, you have to be either far, you have to be near. You can't be both. So it's inconceivable to our tiny brains how it is that God is far away in his Goloka Vrindavan abode in the spiritual world. And at the same time, he's in your heart. He's in the atom. It's by his will, his grace, that the Atma, the individual soul, gets its power. We are reflections of his light. We are tiny expansions of his energy. And on our own, we don't have what it takes to cope with the vastness of material nature. Therefore, Gajendra, very wisely, following the footsteps of the wise, fully enlightened sages and saints of the past, he concludes that in order to protect my body, I can't just rely on the soul, but I have to go to the source of all souls. That source of all souls is unlimitedly powerful. There's no limit to his power. There's no limit to what he can do. This crocodile's got the best of me. You can imagine the crocodile must be gargantuan as well. This whole battle is like something out of a Jurassic Park or science fiction movie. But for the unlimited, all-powerful Supreme Personality of God, especially when he's excited about protecting his devotees, especially when he's ramped his mood up to jump in there and get between his devotee and the threat to his devotee, and the Lord is unstoppable. So Gajendra says, Lord, although I thought that I was arranging my own protection, making my own way, now with this different perspective that you've blessed me with, I see that in all of this, I had only your vitality, your strength keeping me going. The only ultimate reality is you, my Lord. At this point in the tribulation, Gajendra is no longer so desirous of continuing to live in this body. He started out, he wanted to save this body at all costs. He wanted to spend more time with his wives and children. He wasn't ready to go. He was in the peak of his strength. He didn't want to go. He freaked out at the thought of all of a sudden being ripped out of his body. However, now that the consciousness, by the grace of the Lord, now that the Lord has awakened the memory, it wasn't Gajendra that had the memory, it was the Lord that had the memory, and he's gifted that memory to Gajendra. And now Gajendra realizes it's not so important whether you get out of the danger itself, but what's really important is you keep your faith, you keep your trust, you keep your Krishna consciousness in the middle of the danger. Krishna will not always keep you out of the fire, but if you keep Krishna first place, he'll always get you through the fire. Krishna will not always save you from difficulties, but if you chant his holy name, keep your faith, he'll get you through those difficulties. So an insurmountable difficulty faces Gajendra from the material, natural point of view. But Krishna is going to get him through those difficulties. He's going to save him, as we know the end of the story. When Krishna heard the eloquent prayers of the elephant, he steered Guru to the spot, and he sheared the crocodile's head from his body with his chakra. When the reptile lay dead and Gajendra was shed of his dread, he resumed the thread of his prayers and said, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But Gajendra is no longer afraid of losing his body. What he is afraid of is lapsing back into that ocean of darkness that he's just been in for the last who many thousands of years. He does not want to it's called recidivism. He does not want to slide back down into obliviousness. He now, having remembered Krishna, and remember, he was 99% there in his last life as well. So this is kind of like it clicks. It's kind of, he kind of like, I have a lock. Sometimes I have a locker and I have a lock, and I won't tell you the combination, but if the numbers are off, you cannot undo that lock. You cannot undo it if the numbers are off. But if the numbers are all lined up, you can open that lock. You can click it open. Now, in order to close that lock again, the numbers can't be disturbed. If you move the numbers and you don't have that right combination, the lock won't close. It won't close. But as soon as you get the right combinations, then click, the lock closes, and then it's almost impossible to get it apart. So you can almost hear right now with Gajendra, click, click. Yes, he was 99% Krishna conscious last life. He forgot Krishna for thousands and thousands of years because he was relying on his own spiritual, minute, infinitesimal self. Now he's called out for Krishna. Krishna was there all along, poised as his friend, the super soul within the heart, the other bird in the tree, as we talked about yesterday. Now that Gajendra has thrown himself, body, mind, and soul, at the mercy of Krishna, you can almost hear that click, that click. Now the 99% has become 100%. And he's afraid now not of losing his body. He's willing to give up his body. He's willing to sacrifice this body or any other body that he might have. That he's not afraid of that, because he knows he's not this body. Body is meant for investing in the service of the Lord. If I can sacrifice this body in the service of the Lord, then devotees do so without any hesitation. So now that he's afraid of falling back into ignorance, he's vigilant, and it's not going to happen. It's safe enough for us to say Gajendra is not going to backslide. That from here on in, he's going to be, whether he's in an elephant's body or any other body, he's going to be constantly engaged in the service of the Lord, on guard, totally vigilant that no unfortunate circumstances occur that he has to again lapse back into the mode of ignorance. And when you serve the Lord, when you no longer fall down, Prabhupada said once, the difference between me as a devotee And the difference between his Western disciples as devotees, one essential difference. Prabhupada said, you can fall down, but I cannot. So Gajendra's crossed over now. Up until the time the crocodile grabbed his leg, he could fall down. He did fall down. He was in a fallen state, and he'd been in that state for a mind-boggling period of time. But now by Krishna's grace, Yashaham Anugraham Haris, Krishna took away all false supports, all false concepts. He took away the false ego. And now Gajendra is click. Now he's not 99%. Now he's 100%. Now he's on that same level that Prabhupada was in, that he will never, you feel very strongly that his fall downs are over. His fall downs are history. Even this fall down, come on, let's be honest. Let's be honest. He was 99% Krishna conscious. He was cursed unfairly, yada, yada, yada. This is Krishna's arrangement. Krishna used him to teach us a lesson, how it is possible, even at 99%, to fall down. We're not even sure that Gajendra did fall down in that sense. He certainly forgot devotional service. He forgot the Lord. But there's Mahamaya, which is forgetfulness and ignorance. And then there's Yoga Maya, which is forgetfulness directly enacted by the Lord on his servant for a specific purpose. So bottom line, when we see devotees falling short, acting in forgetfulness, doing things that are uncharacteristic, because we know they're pure devotees, we have to conclude that they're acting by the direction of the Lord and not being dictated to by the ordinary laws of karma and their impulses of sense gratification. In all of this, God is the one singular eternal, and we are the plural eternals. God is the provider, and we are the provided for. Nitya Nityanam Eko Yo Vidadati Kama. The one singular, unlimited, omnipotent, omniscient, all beautiful, all powerful, all famous, all humble, supreme personality God, from whom we come. He actually expands into innumerable forms. We are expansions of the Lord called Jivatma. Jivatma means like a tiny, tiny expansion. We're compared to tiny sparks, whereas God is compared to the fire. Or we're compared to little particles of sunshine, whereas God is compared to the sun glow. So the infinitesimal parts are called Jiva Atma, tiny souls. And he from whom they come is called the Paramatma, the Supreme Soul. When the Jiva acts in concert with the Paramatma, they're both in the heart. And when they both get together, Srinvatam Shah Kata Krishna Punya Sravanakir Ridantostu Bada Vidula, through the process of hearing and chanting under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, the distance between the individual soul and the Paramatma is reconciled. The distance, the disconnect is corrected through the process of hearing and chanting. So for that soul who is engaged in awakening or reawakening their Krishna consciousness by the process of hearing and chanting, there is complete harmony, there's complete concert between the super soul and the supreme soul. And it is said in the Bible, Bramarpanam, brahma havir, brahmagno, brahmaivatanaganta, brahma karma sanati. That material body and that material soul, if they are acting exactly in harmony, one devotee said, take my life, Lord, and let it be consecrated to thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for thee. Take my lips and let them sing, always only for thee. Take my mouth and let it be filled with messages from thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Take my intellect and use every power thou shalt choose. Take my will and make it thine, it shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is thine own, it shall be thy royal throne. Take myself, my Lord, and I shall be ever only all for thee. This is a soul who is completely in concert in harmony with the Supreme Soul. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Our Father in heaven, thy will be done. Thy will be done. The difference between heaven and here, heaven and hell, is that in heaven, God's will is done by all the inhabitants, and therefore they're in a state of grace, a state of blessedness, a state of trust, a state of peace. Or in this material world, God's will is not done, and we just look at the havoc. Just look around you at the havoc, at the mayhem. But when this body acts according to the will of God, soul subordinates to the Supreme Soul, and then the body, the glove of this body, acts. It offers incense and flowers for the Lord. It drives the Lord's cars. It cooks food for the Lord. It plays the madungas and the kartal. It weeds and plants and gardens and cuts and harvests. When these senses are 100% engaged in the service of the Lord, and that goes on for some period of time, that body is no longer material. Bramarpanam, havir, brahmagna, brahmaivatanaga, brahmakarmasana. It says that the nature of this material world is that wherever we find perfect Krishna consciousness, body, mind, and soul, that there is nothing material there. Even a body of flesh and blood, if it's engaged in the service, ihaya shahare dasha, manasa kamanadira, manasa, your mind, your words, your wealth, you engage these entirely in the service of the Lord, there walks a liberated soul. One is condemned if one sees a devotee engage in the service of the Lord and thinks or describes of them in terms of their previous life, their previous family connections, their previous caste, their previous education. This is called jati buddhi. One has hellish mentality who sees one devotee engaged in the service of the Lord in terms of caste and creed and material designations. One has jati buddhi, hellish mentality, if he sees the deity as made of brass or marble. One has hellish mentality if he sees the spiritual master as an ordinary person. After being engaged in the service of the Lord for a sustained period of time, even the material body itself becomes spiritualized. Indra, the famous Kirtaniya from Vrindavan. Indra went to Vrindavan in 1984, I believe it was. Indra is like almost our modern Namacharya. He was always chanting the names of the Lord. He was a very, very strict sadhaka, practicing devotional service. He went to Vrindavan. As far as I know, he never left Vrindavan. Once he arrived in Vrindavan in 1984, he stayed there for the last 25 years of his life. He started the 24-hour kirtan. He got some devotees, he got his crew, and each devotee would do several 2-hour shifts of chanting. And in this way, since 1986, 96, 2006, 2016, 38 years now it's been that since Indra started the 24-hour kirtan in Vrindavan, it's still going on to this very day. He passed away after 25 years due to an accident. And he was famous for saying, when someone would ask Indra, like we all do, how are you doing? How are you? He would say, I've been in Vrindavan for 25 years. Every cell of my body changes fully every 7 to 10 years. My body has changed from what it was in the Western countries. It has been changed into, it's the dust of Vrindavan changed 3 times over. It says 3 times my body's changed in the last 24 years in Vrindavan. Now my body is constituted 3 times over. My body is made up, constituted of the dust of Vrindavan. So there's nothing material about it, he would say. In answer to the simple question, how are you? You're not this body, you're living in your eternal spirit soul. So where shall I begin? Every living entity, including you, is eternal. It's the inner self, which is true. The outer body, misty like morning dew, musty and crusty after youth, passes earth to earth, dust to dust, ash to ashes. Every 7 years, each cell is replaced. The old body is effaced, erased, displaced. You're always changing. The cells are always changing. You're always reincarnating. The question remains, who are you? And what are you going to do about this material contamination? You can ignore the concept and hit the exit by the nearest route. You can stay and listen to our lyrics and get a vision of the truth. Is your life of meaning? You're just trying to escape. You're just breathing and taking up space. Most people are not open. They do not want to know. The question I propose from me to you is, do you have the eyes to see? Soul is unborn and never grows old. You can tell by the way that we cry, trying to conform to this limited life. Death is so painful because we're not supposed to die. The soul is eternal. You know it inside. Like, why should I change my body again? That's the beginning of human sense. If I'm eternal, why all the external posturing and pretense? My time would be better spent overcoming rebirth and rising high into the spiritual sky. The human form is a unique opportunity to overcome the cycle of rebirth, which no one survives. Time to realize your eternal state and attain the spiritual world one day. We have free will to make our own decisions, but we have to face the reactions the way we've been living. Sense enjoyment is fleeting, shabby. We know it. We do it over and over, but it never makes us happy. Not knowing our true nature, we cater to this temporary stuff, but it's never enough. We cage ourselves in this prison and numb our consciousness, chroming position. We allow the media to condition us to shop for addition to this body, which we're not. Ignorance causes dissatisfaction for the soul. If you don't know why you're here, ignorance causes dissatisfaction for the soul, and then you eat crabby, go old, and grow cold. If you don't know why you're here, and be honest, you don't, you might find out if you considered the soul. So that's about it for the time today. I noticed out of the corner of my eye a lot of activity here on the sidebar. Priya Krishna, Brent, Shukshma, Dutch, Lakshmi Nishinga, Vaibhavi. What to speak of Rob? Yeah, start at the bottom here. Brent says the hand fulfills Krishna's plan when the glove is engaged in devotional love. Exactly. The hand fulfills Krishna's plan when the glove is engaged in devotional love. You would have had to have heard the talk to understand that, but all of us know exactly what's being. If you saw that out of context, it might be like a head scratcher. But we know exactly what Brent is so nicely and eloquently explaining there. Priya Krishna, who's joined every class now for the last two plus weeks from New York, says so happy to engage in today's discussion. Jai, Indra Prabhu ki Jai. Please accept my obeisances. Hare Krishna, back to you. Bharat Atmarama Prabhu, my wonderful friend whom I admire so much, running a wonderful, peaceful, loving family-like temple in Calgary, Canada. Pranams, good morning to you. Admiram Prabhuji, looking forward to joining you on 25th of May up there. I also got an invitation from Krishna Prem in Thunder Bay, Canada. I know his name is Prem Joshi, his initial Krishna Prem. Their event is on the 21st of July. So I'll be in Canada twice this summer. Excited about that. Lakshmi Nrsimha, he's clarifying that Andrew apparently did leave Vrindavan once. He didn't leave India, but he went to Mayapur one time during those 25 years because the devotees begged him to come. And my guess is he probably chanted the whole time he was in Mayapur. That's what he did. He had complete faith in the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Another short poem here by Brent. Like the click of a combination lock, Gajendra received the mercy of the Lord when attacked by the croc. He was 99% there. He just needed one last scare for him to declare his surrender. Wow, I like that. That's something that, as long as someone knew who Gajendra was, they would understand that perfectly. That's a very concise, eloquent exposition of the whole what happened there. You know, the dramatic moment when It clicked for Gajendra. Like the click of a combination lock, Gajendra received the mercy of the Lord when attacked by the croc. He was 99% there. He just needed one last scare for him to declare his surrender. I might consider robbing that and inserting into my already Gajendra poem. I'll talk to you about that later. Shukshma, Jai Ho, Jai Ho. Now, the problem is I can't see your notes. I see a little bit of it, comes in a bubble, but I don't know how to open it. She says, it looked like Gajendra was finished, but his devotion, and then it's just ... And I don't know how to open that up. It's a mystery. Same thing happened the other day as well. But Brent's third effort here, it looked like Gajendra was finished, but his devotion hadn't diminished. Everything was taken away. All he could do was pray and say, Krishna, I surrender this day. It looked like Gajendra was finished, but his devotion hadn't diminished. Everything was taken away. All he could do was pray and say, Krishna, I surrender this day. I wish that for all of us. That we can say with heartfeltness, Krishna, I surrender this day and every day. Thrice blessed with your association this week. That goes both ways. Lakshmi, so happy to have you on board. And of course, we follow you on Facebook, all the preaching opportunities that you're engaged in nowadays. More power to you. Vaibhavi's here, and Brent again, the first one to join us this morning. Rob, were you in a position this morning where you were able to compose a few lines and share them with us?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Oh, great.
All right. The body without soul is inert, like a discarded shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Krishna can remove the material, so we accept the spiritual. Just as sun rays start with the sun, Krishna is where we come from.
Nice.
Krishna is both near and far, in your heart and in the stars.
Yeah. Chinta Beta Beta Tattva.
Krishna will not be a stranger if remembered when in danger.
Nice. Very nice.
We access Krishna's wealth when we let go of self.
True.
When you chant inoffensively, the Paramatma and soul are in harmony.
Nice. Nice.
Hare Krishna.
When I'm talking, I have a few notes, but mostly it's just, you can imagine my little brain's going, to put all the words and the sentences and the concept together. And, it's a very nice expenditure of energy, but it's intense. It's intense, and it requires a lot of concentration. And it's so nice to know that you guys are right there along with me. I mean, that kind of an output, like 7 or 8 lines full of poetry, and Brett, four different things. It's almost like we're all there together, stretching our limits and tapping the creative powers that are within us, and then being reciprocated with by Krishna with so many nice poetic rhyming words, which are inspirational. So thanks very much for not holding back and jumping in along with me every single morning. I don't think this session would nearly have the attractive qualities for me and others were not our various poets here lending and comments, whether you're commenting with poetic takes a little extra, I think. But we appreciate everybody, listening, processing, sharing their realizations. I think we have a good thing going here. Unfortunately, we'll be not with you Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but Saturday I'll give the talk in Salt Lake City and then again in Spanish Fork. But for these Srimad Bhagavatam classes, we'll see you next Monday. Until then, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.